Good morning. Although I suppose that feels a little bit oxymoronic today, since I would probably bet that none of us really want to be here right now, and nothing really feels good about what we're doing. But I suppose there's no better place to feel miserable and sad than in a room of people that we love, so I'm giving thanks for that. For those of you that I have not met or maybe haven't seen in a long time, my name is Carly, and I've known Chris since high school, thanks to the one and only David Bittner. And today I have the honor and privilege of officiating the celebration of life for my dear friend, Christopher Murri. This is hard, folks. And I can't promise I won't cry a little or a lot during the course of the service, but a wise person told me once that pain often tells us that something really matters. And I know Chris mattered very much to everybody in this room. So in my opinion, let him flow, let him out. Some people are good vibes only, I'm all vibes welcome. And so if grief is love with nowhere to go, there's a lot of love in this room. And so this space is to be whatever it needs to be for you and your family today. Our first reading is from the writings of the prophet Isaiah, which is part of both Jewish and Christian sacred scriptures. Much like Chris, Isaiah was a dreamer, one who was not content with the broken world the way that it was, and envisioned life in a world as it should be. And so this portion of some of the visions of Isaiah felt really appropriate as we grieve the loss of our dreamer and imagine together what a more perfect and just world might be. And so this is from Isaiah chapter 17. For I am about to create new heavens and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and delight in my people. No more shall the sound of weeping be heard in it or the cry of distress. No more shall there be in it an infant that lives but a few days, or an old person who does not live out a lifetime. For one who dies at 100 years will be considered a youth, and one who falls short of 100 will be considered accursed. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be, and my chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Our second reading is a poem by Harry Baker called Sunflowers, or also known as Instructions Upon My Death. This is something that actually came across my feed one morning as I was doom scrolling in bed, not long after Chris had passed, actually, and it absolutely stopped me in my tracks. I immediately sent it to Cindy, and I just remember feeling like it was insightful and thoughtful and humorous and a little bit irreverent and clever, all of the things that I would describe Chris as being, to a level where, honestly, if you told me he'd written it, I would have believed you. It almost felt like he was reaching through the veil to offer a hand of comfort and reassurance. And so this is Sunflowers. Ideally, I would like 100 benches, every single one of them facing the sea. And if that's too much faff, I'd settle for one somewhere in Margate, somewhere you can come and sit and think and be. I don't need a fancy pot to keep my ashes. Just find a decent spot where there's a breeze. So the next time someone gasps at all the wonder in the world, a part of them is breathing in a part of me. At my funeral, I'd like there to be sunflowers, a truly inconvenient amount. For I too will have spent a lifetime searching for the light, and I don't see a reason why that should stop now. Wear what you want. If it were me, I'd go for trainers or wellies, something comfortable and colorful to match. For as it was foretold by the prophet Jamie Tart, dress shoes are for muggles and for twats. For the food, just keep it veggie. For the drinks, serve up Negronis. If I pretend to like them, you can do the same. For the wake, if people want to chat, then I am all for that, but just in case, make sure a corner is stacked with games. And don't let anyone apologize for crying. It is honestly my favorite thing to do. Just make sure everybody knows how much I loved being alive. The only thing that I loved more was loving you. Speaking of which, if you're free, then I would love for you to be there. But if you can't because you're dead, it's not your fault. To be honest, neither one of us quite makes sense without the other. I think we'll all die together like a cult. And if anybody says that I have gone to a better place, that is a kind and very well-intentioned lie. For there can be no better place than in a room with all my friends. Just promise we'll do this again on the other side. Side note, let's also do this loads before we die. And by the time it comes around, maybe I'd hate it. I'll live for ages, and these tastes will change with time. But the one thing that I know that I will always find amazing is what a thing it is to live a life. P.S. Let's also do this loads before we die. I want you to picture the grumpiest old man you can think of. He's skinny, he has terrible posture, and barely picks up his feet when he walks in a way that his gait actually earned itself its own name, the Stanley Shuffle. He's a militant pacifist, one who believes so strongly in nonviolence that you think he might actually fight you about it. In one day, he can tell a group of graduate students, ministry is like slowly being pecked to death by ducks, but for some reason you keep doing it. And then be seen later by one of those same students in a gym locker room, looking at himself in a mirror, wearing nothing but a gold chain, whispering to himself, damn, I'm gonna be a sexy corpse. If Chris ever met him, I think he would be utterly fascinated by the man, and then he would probably smirk and call him a menace. Renowned Christian ethicist Stanley Hauerwas is a professor emeritus at Duke University and is known for his work in pacifist politics, virtue ethics, and the work of the church in providing aid to the poor, the sick, and the dying. And during a guest lecture in one of my theology, medicine, and culture courses, the same lecture actually as the bit about the ducks, he was discussing the idea of universal human virtues, the things that even across religious and cultural traditions, we tend to all, as humans, assume are good. For Hauerwas, he argues that the greatest virtue is friendship. For within that construct, we become our best selves and practice what it means to authentically belong to one another. And he said something that has stuck with me for years. And it was one of the first things actually that came to mind when I had learned that Chris was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He said, I hate death because it takes from me that which it teaches me to value. We often assign value to things because they are scarce. Think gold, oil, Bitcoin, Labubus, whatever it is, right? If those were in unlimited supply, then they wouldn't feel as special and have the same value. I hate death because it takes from me that which it teaches me to value. And it is what makes our human relationships scarce and valuable and sacred. And I know I don't have to tell y'all how much Chris valued friendship and the beauty and meaning that comes from it. Just look at the things that he loved. Jazz music is nothing without the symbiotic relationship between each instrument and the vocalists and the dancers who, with nothing other than the intimate understanding of their shared art, can improvise masterpieces. The Lord of the Rings is probably the greatest tale of love, friendship, and sacrifice that's ever been written. One born out of a real-life friendship between Tolkien and Lewis, two men who truly understood the significance of Jesus' teaching that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for their friends. And I know each person in this room, in their own way, loved and supported Chris in these final years. A true honor, despite being difficult and painful. Like Frodo of the Shire, he was lucky to have so many Samwise Gamgees who looked at him and said, in his suffering, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. So Chris, poet, philosopher, friend, thank you for giving us all something so beautiful and valuable. Knowing and loving you for even such a short time has made us all richer in ways too numerous to count. And may our time together today be one where we remember the gifts and the legacy that you left with us. Strengthen us in our sadness and keep us connected to your spirit of love, generosity, and thoughtfulness until we meet again on the far shore. Amen. We're now going to move toward a time of naming and witness where some friends and family are going to share a few words about Chris and whatever else is on their mind at this time.
Thank you, Carly. Hey, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to help celebrate Chris's life. So I'm Chris's dad, and I'm going to tell you a few stories about Chris growing up and about the person that he became as an adult. Right from the start, we called Chris our miracle child, and the reason for that is that before Chris was born, we had 2 miscarriages, and Gretchen had a number of medical procedures, and we were told by the doctors that we would probably never be able to have children. Well, Chris defied the odds, and when he was born, we were obviously elated and blessed, and he was our miracle child. Chris was very animated as a child. He was curious. He talked all the time. He asked infinite questions. Ask Gretchen about that. Asked infinite questions. He loved being read to, and we loved reading to him. And he became a voracious reader. He started reading the Harry Potter books when he was in the 2nd grade, and he loved those books. He loved them his whole life. When the 7th book was coming out in 2007, The Deathly Hallows, we pre-ordered the book so that it would be delivered to our house on the day that it was released. It was really important that he got it the absolute first minute that he could get it. Chris sat in a lawn chair in the driveway eating his Cheerios, waiting for the UPS truck to deliver his book. The driver pulled up, handed Chris the book. He went inside and read it cover to cover. It was over 700 pages. One of my favorite memories of Chris is, as a child, is the first time we camped together in the backyard. He was probably 4 or 5 years old. We set the tent up, and when it began to get dark, we got in the sleeping bags, and I read some stories to him by flashlight. And when it was time to go to bed, I was getting ready to turn the flashlight out, and he turned to me and said, "Dad, this is the best." As a father to a young son, what could be better than that? Dad, this is the best. Well, Chris went on to develop a love of nature and the outdoors. We went on many vacations to national parks. Yellowstone was his favorite. I remember a hike climbing Mount Washburn where we hiked past a herd of bighorn sheep. We were like 30 feet away, and they were just in the grass looking at us as we hiked by. It was wonderful. He camped a lot with the Boy Scouts, and he attained the rank of Eagle Scout. In 2009, the 2 of us went with a group from Troop 94 on a 12-day backpacking trip at the Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico, in the mountains of New Mexico, and he loved it. Being outside and hiking with his friends, including David. He loved being outside hiking with his friends for 12 days, and I really loved being on that trip with him. As you saw in the obituary, music and playing the guitar was one of the things that defined Chris. I've always felt that every young person needs to find something that they're passionate about and they get really good at. It gives them confidence, and it shows them if they work hard, they can achieve their goals. Well, Chris found his something in playing the guitar. He started playing as a teenager, and he was a natural musician. He would come home from school and not play video games, but he would strap on the guitar and play for hours each day. And when Chris met Cindy, Gretchen and I were really happy that they met. We never saw Chris as happy as he was with Cindy and Molly. It was wonderful. At the beginning of March 2 months ago, we learned that Chris's treatments were ineffective and that he did not have much time left. And Cindy, Gretchen, and I were with him when we received this news from the oncologist. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of emotions that day. But one of Chris's biggest concerns was how it was affecting us and how we would cope in the days to come. He was a very loving and caring man to the end. One last thought, something that I really enjoyed about Chris. I'm very thankful that I had an adult-to-adult relationship with him. My father died when I was 15, and I always regretted not having that adult-to-adult relationship with my father. And I absolutely loved the adult that Chris became. He was fun, he was smart, thoughtful, kind, a loyal friend, a talented musician. He loved nature and the outdoors. He was a loving and devoted husband. He was a wonderful son, and he would have made a great dad. I think his message to us today would be, don't take your health for granted, love your friends and family, and hold them close. Chris, we will always hold you close in our hearts. We love you, and we were very lucky to have you in our lives. And may his memory be a blessing to all of us. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. It's nice to see everyone. I'm Gretchen Murri. I'm Chris's mom. I've never delivered a eulogy before, and so I had no idea how to start this, and so of course I Googled it. And on one site I found they recommended starting by making a list of the person's qualities. So I gave myself 30 seconds, and I came up with a list that says, funny, smart, generous, loyal, kind, creative, passionate, snarky, disorganized, polite, and inquisitive. So then you're supposed to take your list and think of stories that demonstrate those qualities. So I just have a few examples. For one thing, Chris was disorganized. Yeah, he just was. My memories of his high school years are of him rushing out of the house, wherever he was going to, and me chasing after him saying, wait, you forgot blank. That was all the time. And so I guess I was the enabler for him. One year, Chris went with the marching band. They always go on a spring break marching band trip. So Chris was going on this marching band trip. They were going to Myrtle Beach. And I wasn't going. I wasn't involved. But one morning when they were gone, I get a text from Chris, and it says, I can't find my shoes. Now, I'm 350 miles away. What am I supposed to do? So I texted him back 2 words, look around. And about a minute later, I got a text back that said, found him, thanks. They really couldn't have invented AirPods any faster for Chris. Chris was also one of the funniest people I ever knew. He had a really quirky outlook and could find humor in almost anything. Even when he was sick, he still seemed to have that ability. Toward the end, when he was really quite sick, he'd gotten pretty scruffy and rumply, laying in the bed for so much of the time. And so we decided he kind of needed a little spa day, maybe. So Cindy helped him get a sponge bath, and his dad helped him to shave and get his beard looking nicer. And so then he was back in the bed. He had clean clothes on, and the bedclothes were all, nice, smooth. They weren't all jumbled up and pulled out of the bed. And so everything looked nice and neat. And I sat down next to him. And at this point, Chris was not really able to communicate much. We knew he could hear and understand, but he really wasn't speaking very often at all. But I sat down next to him, And I said, "Oh, don't you look nice, Chris? You look so handsome." And he kind of turns his head toward me a little bit and opens his eyes and he goes, "I know." Another thing about Chris was he was generous, and he really liked giving someone the perfect gift. That was really important to him. He really wanted you to love the gift he gave you. In 2018, when Chris had started working for Deloitte, he managed to get 2 tickets to Hamilton, which was playing at the Kennedy Center. It was a big deal. And he got 2 tickets, and he offered me one for a birthday gift. So that was great. So the day of the show, I had gotten a hotel room within walking distance of the Kennedy Center. And I took the train up, and Chris came over the day of the performance and met me at my hotel. And we spent the day walking around the city, around the whole area, and it was great. We just walked, no place in particular. We just walked and talked and enjoyed the city and had a very, very nice time together. And we walked, ironically, part of where we walked was around Georgetown campus and across the Key Bridge, because he wanted to show me the Deloitte building where he was working. And now over this past year, we've spent way too much time on Georgetown campus and way too much time driving over Key Bridge. But still, in spite of that, the day that we spent together was really a great day. And it was a great day, not so much because my son invited me to this hot Broadway show that we were going to see that was hard to get tickets to. And that was nice, but that wasn't what made it a great day for me. What made it a great day for me was the gift. The gift was not just the ticket. The gift was Chris wanting to invite me into his new world, the new world that he had created all on his own. And that was the best gift that he could have given me, the time to spend with him and just enjoy each other. And I want to end with a line from Tolkien, just because Chris adored Tolkien, and I thought there should be something in the program to reflect that. So this is a line from Lord of the Kings, specifically Return of the King. It's from Appendix A. Appendix A, The Tale of Aragorn and Arwen. I don't know how many appendices there were, but I can guarantee you Chris read them all. So Aragorn's words to Arwen when Aragorn is dying are, "In sorrow we must go, but not in despair. Behold, we are not bound forever to the circles of the world, and beyond them is more than memory."
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Murri. I'm Chris's uncle, Dan's brother, and it's wonderful that we're all together, but don't we wish it were for a different occasion? I just have a couple of thoughts and a story or two to tell. I want to talk about my mother, Dan's mother, Chris's grandmother, Luella, who she had her 2 married sons, and they were married, but they hadn't produced any grandchildren for her. And she wasn't, bugging us about it. She wasn't saying, when are you giving me grandchildren? But, the years were going by. And finally, Dan discussed, the trials and tribulations, but finally Chris was on the way and about to arrive and finally was born. And I was talking to Mom a few days after that, and she hadn't seen Chris yet, but she was getting ready to drive down from the Washington area where she lived down to Yorktown to see Chris for the first time. And she said, "I'm so excited. I can't wait to get my hands on him." And, that was just, one of the elements of Chris bringing joy into people's lives. And she was rewarded with 2 more grandchildren and was pretty happy about that. But Chris was her first grandchild, was very special, and just, brought the next generation to our family. And it was just a time of joy. We all have a million Chris stories. I just wanted to tell one. Chris was 3 or 4, and my wife Kathy and I were down visiting Dan and Gretchen and their family. And Dan had to go get tires for the car, so he and Chris and I went off to the tire store to get tires. And my job was to mind Chris while Dan did the transaction. And so we're in the tire store, and Dan's at the counter, doing whatever, buying the tires and doing the deal. I'm with Chris, and we're at the back of the store, and there's a long wall, and there are 12 or 15 or 16 tires set up on display, and they're on shiny wheels, set at a little bit of an angle, each one, and each one has a shiny metal chrome hubcap inserted through the back of the wheel. And I'm there with Chris, and Chris is looking at these, and we're down at one end, and he's looking at this, and he puts his hand on the hubcap and gives it a push, and it falls out of the back of the wheel, goes clang on the floor. Big noise. Chris kind of looks like this, and a little smile on his face, and boy, that was fun. And then he looks down the wall, and there are 12, 15 more wheels there. And at that moment, you could practically see the light bulb light up above his head, okay? And he was off, okay? Down the row, pushing each hubcap out. Clang, 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 clang. I was a second behind him. My top speed may have been higher, but he had the jump on me, and he was moving down that line. Clang, 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 clang. I'm gaining on him, but he's pushing those hubcaps, loving every second of it. Clang, clang. I finally reach him. I grab him. I have him by the torso. And we're at the last wheel. There's one hubcap unpushed. And I have him, and with one arm, he's pushing me away. And with the other arm, he's reaching, straining to reach the hubcap. Okay? And that was Chris, okay? And they were pretty good about it at the tire store, too. And I'll just say that Chris has touched all of us in so many ways. One way he touched us, and this is a story that my wife Kathy would be telling if she were able to be here with us today. But Chris is one of the main reasons that our son Albie exists, because we came to see Chris when he was about 4 months old, and we're just gobsmacked. He was so beautiful and so smart and so funny that we'll get it together and do this at some point, kind of crystallized into, we need to do this. We need our own wonderful little bundle. And Chris and subsequently Mara, inspired us. And without that, would our wonderful son exist or not? Hard to say. So those are just the stories I wanted to share with you, and to say that we love you, Chris.
If I can get in. Hi, everyone. My name is David, and I've known Chris since we were 11 years old. We met in Boy Scouts. We were in the same troop, along with a few others here today. Chris and I spent many days and nights together, hiking, spelunking, that's caving, camping, rock climbing, and biking, and many other activities. Later in our scouting career, we went to Philmont, which we've already heard about, one of the pinnacles of our scouting experience. We'd be hiking along, and we'd hear him start to dive into the history of The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, music theory, or the latest political drama. Around the fire, he'd serenade us with his backpack guitar, playing his latest original or cover. I remember that on the way back from Philmont, me, Tyler Lemon, and him wrote a song of our travels on the back of a flight napkin. After Scouts, we went our separate ways to college and later found ourselves both living in the DC area and eventually becoming roommates. My brother James eventually joined us as our third. There was a lot of memories of the three of us. Chris was always open to hosting us up at the cabin on Afton Mountain to escape the city, especially during COVID. We played games, watched movies, grill steaks, hike, make up songs to pass the time. Chris was always an advocate of exercise. He finally got us to do P90X fairly consistently, not for the faint of heart. The first time the three of us attempted it, we just laid on the ground for a while afterwards. Chris would tell us, please don't ever let me do that again. But we did. Lazy Sundays were a classic in our house. We'd often find Chris napping after chores in his favorite cozy blanket, listening to a soothing jazz album on the record player. We'd had 3 couches at the time, so we would often join him. Chris was hysterical. He was so quick to think up jokes. His comedy timing and conversation was unparalleled. At any given party we had at the house, he'd have an audience, always making him laugh. You know, I miss those days. He truly embodied the Boy Scout law. He was trustworthy, loyal, he was helpful, friendly, courteous and kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. He was always ready to help, even if it meant an inconvenience to him. He spoke his truth, even if it was something you didn't really want to hear. He knew you needed to hear it. Chris was my best friend. He was my brother. And like a few of us, I'm also going to end with a Tolkien quote. Chris was like a walking encyclopedia, so it just seemed fitting. And the ship went out into the high sea and passed into the west, until at last, on a night of rain, Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that in his dream in the house of Bombadil, that gray rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back. And he beheld white shores, and beyond them, a far green country under a swift sunrise.
David, I was really holding it together before you went up on stage. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for coming today. I know he would have loved to see each and every one of you here. My name is James. This is going to sound so similar to David's. We had a very similar experience, but my name is James, and I've known Chris for most of my life, going all the way back to our early scouting days, where Chris and a number of us here in the room were in the same troop. Later in life, I moved to DC and moved in with Chris and my brother David for about 4 years, starting in his basement, just as David's little brother, just like lurking in the basement. And then, after a certain amount of time, ending our roommatehood, feeling like Chris's little brother. I remember early when we were living together, when I was working part-time at GameStop, he would like bring his friends from Deloitte to the mall we were working, or where I was working, and he would just be like, he would like look it through the window and be like, yeah, that's my roommate. And I'd be like, can you go away, please? I'm just trying to do my job. But I always found it funny, and sometimes he would get me Chipotle, so it was fine. But I really think as time went on, we grew closer, especially in COVID when we did so many cabin trips and trips to Charlottesville. We shared so many fond memories in our time living together, so I'm sure you all have fond memories of Chris, whether it's, laughing together, talking about his favorite restaurants. The Bib Gourmands were among his favorite, or his Oxford weave shirts. Like, we would be sitting at home and there would be a knock at the door and it would just be like packages and packages of boxes, and we'd be like, Chris, what did you order? And it was just like hundreds of shirts, and we're like, there's no way you need all of these shirts, but he loved them, and they were good shirts. I'm not wearing one today, sorry, Chris, but I'll get one eventually, I promise. But laughing together, debating intelligent topics that you barely understand, so you kind of let him carry most of the conversation, nod along and say, yeah, I get it. The list could literally go on forever. We also, something that I'm very fond of is Chris and I would be singing a lot, and he would be playing guitar, and David would be there, and Molly and Cindy, we'd all just be hanging out in the room and making up songs. Something else that I've realized recently is how impactful Chris was on my life. He was a really good friend of mine, but I wouldn't be in DC probably if it wasn't for Chris at this point. One big piece is him taking me in when I moved up here with David. No job and a dream, no idea how to really be an adult. Teaching me the ways with David, just trying to figure out how to work our way in the world. Another is how he affected my life socially, where he brought Ken back into our lives, where I don't know if we would have met again, probably one day, but then Ken introduced us to Lauren, and Lauren introduced us to such a wonderful group of friends that I think we'll hold for the rest of our lives, including the love of my life. But anyway, so who I am today a lot is because of Chris, and my life would be very different without him. Anyway, to end, I ask you all this. When does a man truly die? Is it when he's hit by a bullet? Is it when he dies from a disease? Is it when his heart stops? That's not true. A man dies when he is forgotten, and we will never forget Chris for as long as we live. So he will live on forever. As we've all been so lucky to meet him, lived with him, and loved him, it'd be impossible to forget him. So he will never truly die as long as he stays in our hearts and in our stories. Thank you all.
Hello all, thank you for being here today. My name is Adam Van Gorder, and I met Chris on our first day jointly at Deloitte together. I just happened to sit next to him at a table when we first started, and turned into a lifelong friendship. And that's really what's always stuck with me with Chris, is that I revealed to him that I had just moved to DC, I didn't know anyone in the city, and he brought me into his friend group and was just such a community builder in a way that I've always strived to be myself. And being a musician, I would go to his music things, he would come to mine. I'm a choral singer. He came to my concerts, he brought his friends, Cindy too, and he just really wanted to make sure that everyone felt valued in the world. And I'm so happy that my life was touched by his. And so I just want to conclude by saying that may his memory be a blessing, and may his light shine perpetually on all of us. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Vic. I've been lucky to call Chris a friend for almost 10 years now, and I'm going to try to keep it together, but the Bittner brothers really just took it away. Many of you know that Chris is the friend who could roast you just as much as he would root for you, and that's a really difficult balance to strike, and he did it extremely well most of the time. I loved that Chris was my friend that was always up for anything. whether it was watching Lord of the Rings with the Bittners or being that first person who wants to celebrate you on your best days, and also just being relentlessly kind on your worst, just having your back and being what he knew a friend was. Not a lot of people are lucky enough to have somebody like Chris in their corner. And the love in this room just goes to show we're going to miss an incredibly special person. But I don't believe anyone has ever truly gone, and I'm very grateful to continue keeping his memory alive with all of you. I want to thank Cindy and Chris's whole family and Carly for giving us the chance to do that today. And I take comfort in knowing that Chris is probably still roasting us and definitely rooting for us for all of our days to come. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. You know, I tried to write this so many times. I'm definitely not as prepared as everyone else, that's for sure, because I lost my life partner. You know, I wasn't always a Swiftie. How the hell does she keep coming up in everything, right? But guess who got me into Taylor Swift? Chris really liked the Red album. He really thinks that she needs an editor. But he's still a fan. Well, she has this song called Invisible String. Quote, "Isn't it just so pretty to think all along there was some invisible string tying you to me?" And growing up, I thought about that concept a lot. Who's gonna be my person? I wonder what he's doing right now. I'm the definition of Miss Independent. I don't need a partner in my life. I can do things on my own. I can live my life. That person, when I'm living, will come into it and there'll be a cherry on top. And that's exactly how Chris and I were together. We met in 2019, November 2019, on a fateful Saturday at Glen Echo at a swing dance. I was there because I was in a dance group and we were going to perform and we were going to do aerials, and I was terrified because I don't like being in the air. I guess I looked particularly cute that day in my red dress, and you know, he explained it as there were leads circling me like sharks. And he saw me and I saw him and I was like, oh, this guy's gonna try to talk to me. Okay. But I was in a good mood, you know? And he asked me to dance and I was pleasantly surprised. And he kept wanting to talk to me at the end of the dance. And I was like, you know, let's move it along here, buddy. Like high five, move it along. And he just looked at me like so amused, I thought I offended him, but I came to realize that he was very amused. And then later that night, he came up and asked me for a second dance towards the end. And we danced, and then at the end, he said, "Would you like to go out with a cute boy?" A cute boy? I'm looking for a man. Well, I'm not looking, but cute boy. I'm like, yeah, show me where he's at, you know? But luckily for him, I was in my say yes era. So I said, yeah. And he whips out his phone right away in the middle of the dance floor, you know? And I'm like, whoa. Let's take a sidebar, you know? I want to make sure you're not too weird. That's what I'm thinking, right? No, he's freaking weird. But it was 10 minutes, real short, you know, let's save it for the date. And we just real quick realized how much we had in common, but save it for the date. He skedaddled out of there real quick. You know, he needed to make sure that I didn't change my mind. I texted him when I got home, because I was like, wow, who did I just meet? Like, whoa, like I felt it. Like, who did I just meet? And I texted him later and I said, hey, like, what's your last name? You know, because, you know, private investigator, make sure, do a Google search, right, ladies? But also, I like to have full names in my phone. And he responded back with a multiple choice question. I got it right. And that's what I'm going to miss the most about Chris, is his sense of humor and quick wit and his intelligence. You know, he got me a ponytail palm as a houseplant for Valentine's Day because he was looking for the most absurd name to plant. You know, our dog Molly, you know, if you ever see our dog Molly, she's always asking for $1 because she wants to buy fireworks. That, or she is going to ask you to join her club. What type of club? We don't know. It's a social club, whatever that means. He gave her a whole personality. He kept a Cindy quote book on his phone of all the amusing things I would say. And he did that for a lot of you. Hey, Deloitte colleagues. You know, some of the fun things, I guess, were, you know, we're camping one day, and what if a tree fell on us? Wouldn't that be tragic? I want to see an alien without thinking it's a costume. I have decided to take a step back from being polite. And then, you know, the last 14 months, of course. What are your hygiene goals for the day? And, you know, one of my favorites, which also, when I was taking care of him, I felt deeply. I want you to have a sense of personhood rather than blobhood. I really liked how Chris could talk about anything. You know, growing up, sometimes people like to think like, oh, you know, you're a teenager, or you have misplaced anxiety. Stop overthinking. And no, Chris encouraged thought. We could talk about anything, or we could be in utter silence, listening to music, or listening to our favorite podcast. He could talk about anything and have really thoughtful opinions. Literally, like any current event. He, you know, one of my favorite things to do was to ask him, like, he's on his phone, like, what are you researching? What are you reading right now? And it could be like baby orangutans, or lore on his favorite video games, or current events like politics. You know, one of the first things we talked about on our first date was Theodore Roosevelt. He loved him. I mean, that man, yes, you know, like progressive politics, a lover of nature, defender of, you know, workers' rights, but that man was also a family man. He was a reader, a writer of many books. Chris, like when I think about Renaissance man, I also think about that with Chris. I found grad school notebooks or post-grad school notebooks from 2017 where he's outlining what he wanted to do with his life. You know, he read The Art of Gathering and took extensive notes on this because he wanted to be a leader. He wanted to gather people. He wanted to have discourse, to debate, but also, you know, one of my friends recently told me that, you know, they might not agree on everything, but Chris was always really respectful and wanted to engage, even if something was super crazy that they were talking about. You know, Chris, before he started working at Deloitte, he volunteered for Congressman Connolly's election campaign. I don't know if that was 2016 or 2018. Chris was considering politics, or working at a think tank, or being a consultant and learning that, you know, I love in one of his notebooks, he talks about, I need to brush up on that alien business shit. I guess I got to figure out the business world. But he really loved observing people, understanding psychology, why people make decisions. It's a shame what happened to him, because in many ways, I think he's a victim of COVID. When he got sick, he was feeling bad since 2020, 2021. When severe fatigue was happening, where this trouble with sleeping, that was the sign. No one thinks that they have a tumor in their brain. No doctor wants to think a 32-year-old or a 28-year-old at the time, a 27-year-old has cancer. It really brings me a lot of peace to know that Chris has the answers to all the mysteries of the universe. Bigfoot, aliens, what other shitty things did our politicians do? All those crazy people that you're hearing about in the cabinet, the president's cabinet or whatever, he knew who all these people were a decade ago. He could point them out to you in an airport. He didn't just know who they were, he knew what they looked like. He was so smart. He inspired me to read again. He was the comedic relief. He's a hard worker. After work, he'd be doing his vocal exercises for singing, and he got really way better. I would do anything to hear that, what? All those crazy sounds that he'd need to do to train his vocal cords. I'd do anything to hear that again. So 32 years old is way too soon to go. But I want you all to know that Chris lived a full life. Those goals that he outlined in his notebooks in 2017, with work, friendships, hobbies, and his relationship, he achieved them. He got to work with really smart people on interesting projects. He wanted a sense of camaraderie with his friends. And he got that, living with the boys. And I wish he got to do more of that with you all. The fatigue, the hey, I can't make it to kickball. We all know now what was happening. He regularly attended his music lessons even after he got his diagnosis. He learned to record his music. He wanted to put out an LP or a record. That's my project right now, is going through all that stuff. All these beautiful licks, and then him talking about the music theory behind what he just did on the guitar. And he found a life partner who made him feel so safe to be himself. And I would have done anything to help him achieve his dreams, even if he beat this thing, right? I was like, so are you really gonna go back to work? Maybe you should do something part-time. Who knows how much time we have left? What are you gonna do with that? Chris told me he was so sorry he ever met me because he didn't want me to go through this. I wish things were different, but if this was gonna happen regardless of whether or not I was around, I am so happy that I was there. this grief isn't going to go away. There's no moving on. It's not going to shrink. Think of it as a rock that pretty much doesn't change. But then there's this moss that's growing on it, and that moss, that life that you live after your person goes, it starts covering that rock of grief. And it gets thicker and thicker and thicker and greener and more vibrant. And that's what's going to happen. I'm a better person because of Chris. I'm so damn lucky to have met him. It's wild. I look back in hindsight, I'm like, how did that happen? And the message is that we had it all. We really did. And it can go like that. So please live your lives. Don't have regrets at the end, whenever that can be. Chris would want that for you. He wants that for me. And I'm very happy that now he gets to do all the things he wanted to do without the heaviness that comes with life and with supporting yourself and being in this world. He gets to do all the things he wanted to do without all that crap. So thank you all so much for being here and your support, and love you very much.
A few more words and a blessing and a song. We give thanks for the life and legacy that Chris left with us. He was the one that was a miracle child, a voracious question asker, a loving and caring man to the end, a wonderful son, somebody who was a loving husband, who would have made an excellent father. He was snarky, he was disorganized, he was the perfect gift giver. He was somebody who had an opinion about everything, a community builder, will roast you and root from you, even from beyond. A bringer of joy, a disturber of hubcaps, the reason for Albie's existence, the author of Philmont Hiking Ballads, resident comedian and speaker of truth, who's a life partner, a cute boy who's also weird, my best friend, keeper of quote books, somebody who's a person, not a blob, lover of an Oxford weave, the reason that many of us are who we are today, a lover of Teddy Roosevelt, somebody who will never be forgotten, the one on the other end of the invisible string, the one who now has all the answers to every question he ever had, and the one who wants us to live lives as full as his was. I pray that we have the help to carry on Chris's legacy until we too journey to the west and join him on the white shores and green countryside under swift sunrise. Amen. So this is usually the part of the service called the commendation, which sometimes happens at a graveside or sometimes happens in a place like this, where we send Chris off to the great beyond with a blessing. However, we thought it would be appropriate to share some of his own words as a commendation. And so may we receive this gift of song from our dear friend as we say goodbye.
I walked all night searching for the sun just to find my peace of mind. I stood my ground, but my mind was on the run. Lay me down by the riverside. The dawn arrived. Could have sworn that light came late. It'd been such a long, long time. Felt my thoughts slowly slip away. Lay me down by the riverside. Let the rain run down and finally let me be. Let the rain run down and sweep me off my feet. Let the rain run down and pull me out to sea. Lay me down by the riverside. I've cried, I've prayed, I've bartered and I've begged. I've asked for one more try. If now's the time, I'll let this levee break. Lay me down by the riverside. Let the rain run down and finally let me be. Let the rain run down and sweep me on my feet. Let the rain run down and pull me out to sea. Lay me down by the riverside.
So I will dismiss you all from this part of the celebration. We move on to the eating part, which, you know, we're Southerners, right? Like, that's how we show love to each other. And so I encourage you all to talk and mingle and reminisce and all of the good things together. And so in closing, I'm going to share a brief blessing. And this is something that is actually not part of, the order of service is loosely based on the United Methodist order of service for this, and I didn't love the blessing for that, and I actually decided to switch it up and use the one that's often used at the end of weddings, because I think that it encapsulates so much of what has been shared here today about Chris's legacy and how we will move forward in life having known and been changed by him. And so, friends, as the earthly bearers of Chris's memory and legacy, go forth and bear witness to love in this world, so that for those for whom love is a stranger may find in you generous friends. Amen.